Thank you very much for this brilliant introduction. My presentation is a little tricky in the sense that people of the past are not there, and we have to try to reconstruct how they were organized, and that's the role of archaeologists to do. So you will have to be patient with me because I will not tell you how early humans were organized, but we have a few clues of how to investigate this kind of organization in the past. Let's see. To frame the topic, we will look at tentatively early human forms of organizations. Humans are primates, and we can learn from contemporary primates to try to reconstruct how early humans were living in small groups. Archaeology shows that all these early humans were scattered in small groups all over East and Northeast Africa. So we can really rely on the group organization of chimpanzees and bonobos to try to think how these groups were organized. We cannot go further in this kind of examination. The second point is to look at the diversity of African social organizations, but we cannot stay at the level of generalities. So I will pick two cases, three cases, let's see. Pre-Ghana social formation, the formation of Chadic chiefdoms, and the dynamic of self-sustaining autonomous villages. We already have in the last, let's say, 3,000-4,000 years, different kind of political organization in Africa that can be presented here very quickly. So it is particularly difficult, as I say already, to pinpoint the characteristics of early form of social organization put in place by our remote ancestors. There are, however, subtle ways to rely on available archaeological record to highlight some aspects of the social dynamics involved. The first is the very existence of archaeological site means that people were congregated at some specific spot in the landscape. The second is the transportation of raw material across the landscape, showing that people were not living as individuals scattered, but they were living as human in groups. So primatology can help us understand how this early society was organized. We have three main lines of investigation: the material culture, the tools. We won't go in details. You can look at the slide. The sequence we have to investigate is 3.3 million years long. So can't go in details. It started with what we call scavenging and hunting, gathering, and farming and livestock husbandry to the present. And in terms of site or habitations, they start with scattered or bone and stone, open air and cave sites, small camp and villages, and then hamlets, cities, chiefdom, and states. And so now let's go to precise examples from Africa in the last 4,000 years. Here is the pre-Ghana formation that show you a different, the map of Ghana is located between the Senegal and the Niger River, somewhere in Southwest Sahara. And during that time, there were lakes almost everywhere. This is a lake deposit next to the cliff. And this is a look at the village that was built with dry stone. And this village was 12 hectares inside with more than 200 habitation units. So in political terms, now we look at the distribution of these sites on the landscape. And that's how we start reconstructing political system. We have sites of different size located at different parts of the landscape. And we can bring them together by looking at the clustering, meaning how they are grouped, big sites with small sites and hamlets around them. So in this small part of the data sheet, we had a few, let's say 4 different clusters with one major site and smaller site. So we can consider that there was a kind of political system putting these people together. This is one map of one of these large villages, 12 hectares in size, with livestock enclosure outside and a wall around it. So the village was protected, and it was part of a two-level system in that pre-Ghana formation. In terms of long-term evolution, the system lasted for almost 2,000 years, and it expanded. I won't go in details because we have no time, but here we have a kind of settlement hierarchy with a big center and large villages, hamlet, and small villages in a four-level hierarchy. So we may say that before emergence of Ghana, we have what we can call kind of chiefdoms that emerged some more than 2,000 years ago. Now let's shift to the center of Africa. We have a totally different, a little similar. In the Chad Basin, at the very beginning of 10,000 years ago, Lake Chad was huge. It was as big as the Caspian Sea. As you can see, it shrunk and opening space for human colonization. So the work done in the area was focused on a small part of that lake, which is characterized by artificial mound. We call them mound, which are the remains of human habitation. So to move forward, we have reconstructed the sequence of evolution of settlement in that area that started some 4,000 years ago by two sites that was on the shore of lake. You can see them here at 10 kilometers from each other. There was pastoralist site, mobile pastoralist. And then the second step is maybe not directly, but there is emergence of farming societies that are still at the delta of ancient Lake Chad. But what is interesting in this map is that the sites are almost equidistant, 5 kilometers from each other. We like to make it artificially. It is absolutely extraordinary. So this means that we have some small peasant villages, totally autonomous, governing themselves in the small, what we call economic zone. The system keeps growing, and at some time in the past, we have two competing units that emerge, and we can see them on this site hierarchy. The top one was Huluf, and the second one was a cluster of mound, the Blay Mound system. We start having evidence of difference of power. Here we have a horseman that was buried at one of the central sites. He has spurs on his leg. Sorry. He has a spur on his leg, and these are some of the goods, one for male and one for female. And these are carnelian beads that was imported some from West Africa. And these copper items were also imported in the area. So what we have there is the emergence of social differentiation with the formation and elite that was basically warrior-like. And so this group was buried in a very special cemetery that allow us to really look at power differences in a small group. So we may say that for the 16th and the 18th century, we have the emergence of a political elite that is represented in this cemetery with a very specific burial protocol. Among the Chadi, the members of elite are still quite recently during the colonial period, the members of elite are buried in sitting position with the legs in apart because you don't have to touch the ordinary soil. So we may say that compared to the Dartishit, where there was no wealth differences, but still some political hierarchy emerging in the Chad Basin, and sometime during the last 2,000 years, we have an emergence of a warrior-like elite that resulted in the formation of what we know today as the Kotoko princedoms of northern Cameroon. And then the the last example is that from Burkina Faso, where we have studied a settlement system also lasting for almost 2,000 years, from the middle of the first millennium BCE to the 17th century. Here we have basically, we can call them countryside type of organization with a system of settlement made of mound clusters, meaning the village was made of different independent units that were part of the same villages, but not contiguous, as we can see on the map. So we're able to reconstruct the chronology of this settlement system, and you can have some detail of it here, where it started with three sites and moved to another level, and so on and so forth. So that area was very involved in iron production on the edge of Mali Kingdom, and it is generally hypothesized that they were providing Mali, or the core of Mali, with iron tools and iron material. So by the end of the 14th century, we have these different kind of site, but all of them being large settlement or autonomous villages that were self-governing. Here we have a view of one of the clusters that was burned. This is wonderful for archaeologists because the preservation is good. So that's the third case, is now large autonomous villages that was probably run by what we may call primus inter pares, meaning village elders and so on and so forth. So finally, in terms of conclusion, we may say that the legacy of a diverse mode of social organization, ranging from small, scattered, and relatively independent face-to-face society to highly centralized and ranked chiefdom and states, is still present today in the continent. In the three case study presented briefly, the Pre-Ghana, the Muhumban social formation lack material evidence of differential wealth and social ranking, and feature multi-generational residential facilities or extended families. The Huluf case points to the opposite direction, with differential accumulation of wealth and prestige items, the emergence of a class of warrior horsemen, a power centralization, and social ranking. Thank you very much for your attention.